Hi everyone and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel for another Elite 11 team reveal. We've got Craig on this week. We're looking ahead to Gameweek 11. We're going to take a look at some forward options, talk around the midfield quandary as well, and take a look at how Craig's been performing. He's doing so well since his wildcard, which makes a great change from some of the other elite managers that I seem to be cursing with these weekly videos. So that's going to be fun to get into. Guys, you can head over to fantasyfootballfix.com to get all of your push notifications when these elite managers do make their changes. So I'd encourage you to do that. And without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. Guys, welcome back to the channel, and we're looking ahead to Game Week 11 with Craig. He's back on for, I think, the third time this season. And look at that graph that we've got on screen. Craig, you've been kicking ass. It's so nice to have you back on the channel, and I'm sure you'll be in celebratory mood. How's it all been going for you, mate?
Well, it's been going good, obviously. It's I don't quite know how, if I was being completely honest. It doesn't feel like I've been entirely in control behind the wheel. Obviously I've made some choices and we'll talk about those choices, but a lot of them were 50-50s, and if I'd gone the other way on lots of them, I'd be looking at a graph going in a very, very different direction. So it feels fortunate.
Okay. Well, I think that's being very humble, mate, because, I mean, the decisions that you make, having spoken to you several times, and the guys, the viewers will be aware that how carefully you consider your options with all the data that you have at hand. So when exactly did you press that wild card? We can see that you used your wild card, Craig. Was that a few game weeks ago? I think it was game week 8, right?
It was an 8. Mm-hmm. It was 8. And the plan, I think we discussed this last time, but the plan at the start of the season was always game week 8.
Right.
And that was because of the Chelsea swing, primarily, not just, but because of the Chelsea swing. Yeah. And then, as it turned out, Chelsea were dog shit, and we couldn't wait to get rid of them from the team, and we all did. And then game week 10 seemed like the optimal, at least for myself, to wildcard. But then the price changes started going absolutely nuts. Mm-hmm. I was looking ahead and looking at what team I would like, and then almost on a daily basis, it was like, no, I can't afford that. And then the next day, but no, I can't afford that either. Yeah. And then I started comparing my game week 8 to my 10 team, and there wasn't actually so much difference. And I could get to the game week 10 team by game week 10. So I was like, oh, screw it, let's just do it now. So I went for an 8. And,
we can see. Look at that spike off the back of that wild card. It's really nice to see, Craig. And you're sitting around 225k now. Obviously, loads of the season left to go. So, is this about where you'd hope to be? This sort of 10 game weeks into the campaign, if someone offered you a 225k game week rank with one wildcard chip used, would that be about where you'd hope to be at this stage of the season?
Yeah, I would rip your hand off.
Yeah.
I mean, the issue with ranks, it depends. I mean, we're still, I think I said to you last time, but I mean, 100k by Christmas would be my kind of ballpark.
Yeah, I remember.
Comfortable figure, but it still depends on what is the gap between 100k and 10k. 10k is still, I don't care what anybody says, that's still the aim, but it depends on the gap. But the gaps seem and feel so tight this season still, as plenty of the other elite managers are finding out in the different direction, so it's 225 feels completely fine. Can I get 100 by Christmas? Yeah,
definitely.
I feel fine with that.
Yeah, and you should do, man. We can see there you've got your 6 top 10k finishes, and I think the smart money has you finishing with a number 7 alongside that, Craig. When you see the update this graphic going into next season, so I mean you've got a nice healthy team value as well there. You've mentioned the sort of price volatility as well. I just wonder, are we getting to the stage now where I don't know, where managers, the elite managers I've interviewed in the past, tend to be are more aware of it in the early stages and chasing those rises and being more kind of cognizant of it, and then as we get towards Christmas and into the latter part of the season, to be like, actually it's less meaningful. Have we reached that point yet, do you think?
I haven't. I mean, I've had this bizarre, as an aside, when I started playing FPL, and this is years ago, I forget how many years ago it is, I was actually quite embarrassingly most interested in team value, not the points, the team value.
Okay.
My aim was to get as many millions in the bank. So, and I've kind of had that. So early moves have always been completely okay with me. And it's incredibly rare that I've been bit on the arse by going early on a player and then they get, injured in the midweek game or something like that. So I'm relaxed about that. At the start of the season, we were all sitting there, myself included, saying, "Oh my God, the pricing is completely insane this season. Everyone's so cheap." And yet, you reach game week 5 and everyone's going, "You know what? I wouldn't mind an extra 0.5."
It happens every season, doesn't it?
It's exactly. It's every single season. You just can't get enough money. There's always something to spend it on. So I'm not there yet where I'm thinking I have enough to be satisfied. So in the coming weeks ahead, I mean, there's quite a few game weeks coming ahead where there's European midweek games, and I've matured enough to not go before the midweek games unless I really, really have to.
Yeah.
But if it's a Wednesday night and the full-time whistle is gone, and I sit there and I watch the interview with De Zerbi, and he doesn't mention that Matoma broke his leg in the changing room after coming off the pitch, then I'll happily make the move early, just to avoid not missing a rise or avoid a fall. So I'm still interested in the value at this stage. Absolutely, I think the wild card showed, and I think especially those who wildcarded just this week gone would also feel the same way, that the funds are tight, at least in relation to those players who we all really want.
Yeah, they are, which is remarkable, right? Like you say, you and I talked at the beginning of the season, so did the other guys from, the elite managers I interviewed, and everyone thought that we'd have this slush fund available, and it's just not proving to be the case, right? It's really, really tight. I'm smiling. It happens every year.
Absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. Craig, look, you're doing really well. We can see how the season's panned out. Let's take a look at how your team performed in game week 10, which was another solid one. So let's take a look and see how that team did in game week 10. So here we are then, guys. So off the back of the wild card a couple of game weeks ago, this is the squad that Craig's arrived at. We can see there, Simicast, a bit of a gift for those wild carders, right, Craig, with the news that Andy Robertson picked up that pretty serious injury, didn't he? And Simicast has come in and picked up a nice couple of solid returns there. Do you want to talk us through the defensive contingent there, inclusive of the two goalkeepers, Craig, and whether or not there were any kind of quandaries that you were thinking over in wildcard, or was this one that sort of picked itself?
I mean, we have,
there's no Trippier, for example.
Bottom, right? No, I mean, well, let's go with that. Let's start with that, because that was pretty much the defining element of the wildcard. Okay. So there were plenty of names who picked themselves. Madison just left this week, but he came in. Well, he came actually before the wildcard. So. Essentially, the wildcard choice was Trippier or Son. And with the other players who were nailed, and that was Diaby, Bowen, Watkins, Haaland, Salah, then there just wasn't budget for Son and Trippier. Yeah. So I came down on the Son side. And until this week just gone, it was just edging toward it being a mistake. Trippier, I think, was ahead in terms of where I could otherwise have been. I think that pendulum will swing from week to week. I don't expect Trippier to haul this week against Arsenal, but it could easily be 6 points. So that was the main choice, and I went all in insofar as I'm regretting it a wee bit. I went in with two very cheap. Excuse me for hiccuping. Two very cheap defenders with. Lamptey, which feels like a rush of blood to the head already, and Charlie Taylor. Charlie Taylor, I'm completely happy with. 3.9 nailed. Yeah, did I think he was an assist or it was a goal this week.
He picked up a goal. Yeah, he did.
Lamptey was a mistake. Let's just say that it was. He's never going to get on the pitch by the look of it, so I shouldn't have done that. But it doesn't matter. He's third bench. I'm not really concerned. So those the team pretty much picked itself, apart from that primitive choice between Son and Trippier.
Yeah, and it's a really tough one, right, between the two, weighing those two. They're sterling, no pun intended there, FPL options, aren't they? Son and Trippier with a great elongated past of FPL success, aren't they? So I can imagine that was pretty tough. The goalkeeper Areola Turner, really cheap couple there. I think a couple of managers have opted for that. You happy with it, Craig, at the moment? You think it's still okay to just run with those two and accept it, bearing in mind how cheap they are?
Absolutely. I really do. I mean, looking at the there's just nobody else who hugely appeals.
That's right.
Clean sheets seem at such more of a premium this season that I think the save points and the accumulated bonus points are much more realistic and achievable goals. I mean, at City, we talked last year quite a lot about my good mate Edison and how he cost me. I mean, City and Arsenal still have the by far the best defensive numbers. City still have a capacity to give away a goal.
They do.
Arsenal is an interesting one. At some point, we're going to have to talk about Raya. And is he the best route into the Arsenal defence? Because I think right now, I'm just looking down at the notes I've made before. I think that's the defence they have right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
So yes, it could be interesting, but not right now. I don't see a way. I've made my bed now. I've gone with cheap defenders or 2 cheap defenders, 2 cheap keepers. And I suppose the key to changing that is going to be at some point when Watkins leaves the building, probably around game week 14, that could raise some cash for somebody else.
Yeah, well, we're going to look at forward options.
Yeah. So similarly, Jared Bowen is, an expensive mid compared to the other options like Buemo or Mitoma. So there could be some money raised there, but it's a transfer that I don't feel that I need to make.
Compelled to make. Yeah, I get it, mate. I'm sort of selfishly asking because looking around and just wondering whether or not there was anyone leaping out as a kind of possible route to differential in terms of the goalkeepers. But the value that they have at 4.1 and 4.2 at the time of recording is it's hard to escape that, definitely. Matty Cash there in as the third Villa player. Was there any temptation to look elsewhere? Diaby and Watkins, I guess, on a wild card were pretty straightforward. When I talked on previous videos, there's noises that Matty Cash's underlying data in terms of how attacking he'd been is slightly subsiding. You seeing that as a concern, Craig? You still think he's a valuable option?
You might well be right, but at that price and with those fixtures, I'm just not complaining.
No, and a lovely substitution just in time, right, in game week 10 as well.
That's one of those things with this season. I mean, that's just ridiculously lucky for me. And cash owners, it's unjustifiably lucky. But I mean, I'll take it. Fine.
I'll take it. Got to take the good luck because there's enough bad luck in this game.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm trying to think now. I brought in Simicast this week, and I can't for the life of me remember who. Oh, it was Porro, of course. I had Porro from the wildcard, and I brought in Simicast. That could have also been. I think I had 3 options which I was playing with. The one was Simicast because I have this. I'm expecting to get bitten. To be completely honest with Simicast, I know he's a gift, but it just feels like it's an accident waiting to happen. But at 4.5 or 4.6 or whatever it costs, it's like, well, fine, I'll take that risk. But the other options were Soufal or Koufal, whatever you guys call him at West Ham, and Gueye at Crystal Palace. But there was just a slightly larger upside to Simicast, so I went there. But Cash, Cash and Diaby and probably Watkins. They're on not borrowed time, but I mean the plan is as soon as their fixtures, which are fantastic right now, as soon as they dry up, then there are too many other fantastic options to keep them and hope that they continue the form. So that they'll be gone, and that could free some cash for a better defender or defenders. Yeah. But even then, I mean, will it? There are so many good cheap options.
There are,
which are presenting themselves. So it's. At least in defence.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you and I were talking off camera. I mean, we're going to come on in a moment, guys, to talk about some forward options that might be of interest to the viewers as well. But Craig was mentioning offline as well that actually the midfielders form part of that discussion as well in terms of how team specific you have your money spent, set up rather. We've talked about Douglas Luiz on this show as well, and he's been in a hot run of FPL point scoring form as well. But how do you get him in? Only the midfield is chock-a-block full of great options like the 5 that we're looking at right now. Anyway, let's take a little look at how you're shaping up, Craig, for Game Week 11. Obviously, no European fixtures this week, but we do have some domestic cup action to contend with. But let's take a look at how you're considering your troops will be assembled for Game Week 11. So I always like it when we come to look at these graphics and there is a new, different team strip on the graphic that Finn has had to create. And we see one in the back line there. Mr. Taylor taking up residency in the back line here in game week 11. So Dan Burn misses out. He's got a tough fixture right against Arsenal. Was that a close call for you, Craig, or does the fixture just say this is a no-brainer?
It was a no-brainer, and to be completely, it was a no-brainer before he scored at the weekend as well.
Yeah.
So I expect Arsenal to score.
Yeah,
despite Newcastle's, what should we call it, defensive prowess. They also, a little bit like West Ham, they look knackered this weekend. So I can really, I struggle to see how they keep Arsenal out.
Yeah.
So I would rather go with the chance of a clean sheet against a slightly toothless Palace rather than against Arsenal.
Yeah, I hear it.
I just,
Palace look a little bit, like you say, a bit anemic, don't they? And that's been the case for a while now. Hodgson's comments against his own team were a bit brazen, weren't they, on the weekend as well? So don't look to be particularly happy there. So I really like that pick as well. So we're not envisaging changes here, right, Craig? So we're actually looking at this as a straightforward roll for you, or is there any transfers on your mind?
So. Yeah, there's only one, but I don't think I'm going to do it. And I was hoping you could help me out, because you're a West Ham fan.
Sure am.
And I only saw the highlights, and I've read different comments about it. But
the Everton game.
West Ham apparently didn't look fantastic this weekend.
I was losing my shit, man. Bowen. It was bad. I mean, I was at my girlfriend's family's house, and it was a Sunday game, and it should have been a nice, relaxing lunchtime experience. And I wasn't particularly good company, and I blame them, because they performed particularly poorly. I think at the moment there's a real feeling in the fan base that the team that has been assembled is good enough to be performing a lot better than we've seen recently. It does feel like a bit of a movement towards Moyes' how he sets things up. He's got a lot of good grace having won a trophy, and that will never be forgotten, but it is in the rearview mirror. And I was stunned to see Antonio retain his place in the team after how poorly he played against Villa. And he was hooked before the hour, and it couldn't have come sooner. It could have come sooner, in my opinion, because it was poor. And I did think Bowen was the bright spark of the team. Craig, so that's an honest assessment. Like he had a headed chance from a great JWP set play as well, which stands out from memory. So I still think he's having a good season, and he's our talisman. But it wasn't a good performance, and we'll need to play a lot better if they're going to continue being FPL relevant, I think.
Yeah, okay. Because I mean, I brought him in. I was delighted to have him in on the wildcard. The fixtures from 10 onwards are just, it's a hold. It should be a hold.
Should be a hold. Yeah.
Just the vibe, but the vibes were just so.
Yeah, it was a bad performance. It really was. Yeah. I think.
So you asked about is there a move on the way?
Yeah.
Sorry, this is to answer your question.
Yeah.
It was Buemo.
Now you've talked to me about him before, so is this a bit of humble pie? What are we saying?
Yes, massively.
Okay.
Massive portion of humble pie. Matt Corbridge.
Yes.
Who is one of the Corbs, who's one of
the he's been on the show a few times.
So he said at the start of the season, if you're not picking Buemo, you're not playing the game right. And I thought that was just Matt chatting shit, and I didn't share the opinion. I thought that the expected numbers were way too high. I hadn't compensated for Tony leading the team. It was all a purple patch, etc. But it's not. The numbers just keep ticking in every single week. And he's sitting really high on my, damn it, I wish I'd brought him in on my wildcard list. There's always one regret on a wildcard. So,
there is.
So he's the one who's banging on the door. It was originally Matoma. Matoma was my plan to bring in round about now, but they also look, it's not so much the rotation. I think Matoma's also going to get sufficient minutes to do something interesting, but they also just look a bit crushed.
Yeah.
And maybe this coming weekend, they'll be fine with a whole week off. But humble pie, lashings and lashings of it.
It's interesting,
it's
isn't
time
it?
to bring him in, but it's
Well,
just
they
when.
play one another, don't they? So that'd be a really interesting change to take Bowen out from Bumo then, and in a fixture when they play one another. It's an interesting quandary you're faced with. I've just taken a little of the fixtures on Fix just for the next 3 game weeks, Craig. So they've got Brentford ranked on mid-table for attack difficulty there with West Ham, and then an away match at Liverpool followed by a home match against Arsenal. So, I guess the fixtures are kind of irrelevant for Mbumo because you'd be playing him every week, right? But it isn't the best run after West Ham, is it?
It's not a great run, but I mean, it's not bad either. I'm looking at some of the. I had, just had a quick shifty at the predictions on what's it called on Fix. I always forget this every time I want. I shouldn't say it. But the predictive tool, whatever your algorithm is called, Buemo's sitting high on that. I'm looking at what's his name, Chase, FPL Chase has got some cracking tables about rolling last 12 games. Then Brentford are sitting 5th, 1.7 non-penalty XG per game. Everything goes through him. He plays the full 90 or 98.
Oh, yeah.
I'm, as I say, humble pie. So it's just a question of when, because there's nothing wrong with playing Bowen against Brentford. This week there isn't, and it feels like it might be too early to do it, but that at the same time feels like the move which
you're tempted with.
I feel like very, very tempted by.
But
I'll see how the week goes. There is no rush.
No, and something could happen, couldn't it, midweek with the domestic cup fixtures that are being played as well. It's a really interesting one. I guess if you're gonna do it, it would be before that game rather than the Liverpool or Arsenal games to follow. But always nice having the two stockpiled, isn't it? I mean, I'm looking through the rest of the team. Captaincy, obviously, game week 11 looks pretty straightforward, right, in terms of Haaland's game against Bournemouth. Just on the previous slide, Craig, who did you captain in game week 10? Can you recollect?
The game week
just gone because I noticed it wasn't on
Salah.
It was on
Salah.
Yeah, fair enough.
So soon tell you.
Game
week 10.
I'm just intrigued as to
Captain Salah.
As to the approach folks are taking who are moving the captaincy between these great players. You've got obviously Son as well, and in theory he would have been a nice selection as well in game.
Well, to answer your question, who do I choose? The last 4 or 5 games I've been going off the algorithms. And that's yours.
Yeah,
that's the fixed one, which is very accurate. I've been looking at Review. I've been looking at Nicholas Hoxram's transfer algorithm. I look at all of them. I'm looking at I'm just looking at the predicted points because they're so close.
Yeah, they are close.
They're so close. But I think that in every single one of the weeks that I've had, I think the last 3 or 4 weeks, I've picked the wrong captain of my big hitters. You know what I mean? Last week I went for I could have gone Son and not Salah. This week it was I went Salah. It could have been Haaland. He got a much higher score. So it doesn't feel like I'm nailing the captains at all this season. I mean, the rank's great. I'm not complaining about it, but all things being equal, it's fine. But it doesn't feel like I'm nailing the captain.
I mean, it's a big difference, right? We were talking about potentially huge point swings because these great players are returning well, aren't they? They are justifying their price points, absolutely. Craig, let's move on and take a little look at some of these forwards that we've talked around. We've got some forward options here, guys, that you might be considering if you're looking to potentially play 3 players up front. So let's take a little look at some of the forward options. Okay, guys, so we've pulled out 5 forwards here, which we're looking at over the next few game weeks of game weeks 11 through game week 13, and some price points there for each of the players and some stats regarding their minutes, their goals so far this season, the assists, XGI, and some predicted point stats as well. So we're thinking, Craig, there might be the opportunity here for potentially players or FPL managers to move to 3 up front, possibly, or even to start considering the second forward a little bit more carefully here. So what are your thoughts around playing 3 up front? We've talked about this wealth of options in the midfield. Do you think playing 3 up front is still a viable strategy for FPL managers despite that?
I think it is. It's not for me because I think it's a bit late for me having wildcard as an 8 because it depends who we're talking about. But I've made my bed with my wildcard team, and The only one who would be a relatively easy shoe-in or a shuffle in would be Nketiah.
Yeah.
Not this week. Again, I think they'll score, but I don't think he's going to score with every single shot he
Newcastle
takes,
game.
which he did last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I could do Archer to Nketiah and would that be Bowen or Diaby to, let's say, what's his name? Chelsea fella. Palmer.
Oh, to Palmer, Cole Palmer. Yeah.
Who also seems a gift, by the way.
Yeah.
But that would work, but I'm still not completely convinced that for me it works. But there's a few of the, a few people I know, they went 3-4-3.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 3-5-2 has been clearly the template for most of the season. There's a few I know who went 3-4-3 on the wildcard. I'm looking at their team and going, oh, that is sexy.
Yeah.
It's really, and especially, I mean, the one who scares me is Darwin.
Gosh, well, this is a sore point for me because I transferred him out in game week 10, but let's devote some time to him. So we're looking at it here. It's just 419 minutes. I think that's been the challenge. As a previous owner, I was always concerned about that side of it. But I mean, the guy he just is a stats monster, right? In terms of the chances that he takes. Is that what you see as well here? And actually, his ceiling is really high.
No, it's not the stats. It's not the stats. I'll tell and what's his name? Jackson from Chelsea is also a stats monster. Mm-hmm. But I think we can all agree that he's not going to be coming into our team.
He's not on this slide.
No, he's not. Is he? Funnily enough, but Darwin was a stats monster last year as well, but he still couldn't hit a cow's ass with a banjo. But this season, he just looks the last few games like it's his place in the team. Mm-hmm. And that's where it gets a little bit scary. I mean, it's 490 minutes over the season, but the last few weeks, I mean, as I seem to think you sent to me on a separate thread last week, he missed that spectacular sitter midweek.
It was after that I transferred him out. Yeah, in the Europa League. Yeah.
The Europa League, that was it. Yeah, but he's the one who I really feel can do serious damage to my rank. Alvarez is running incredibly hot.
Yeah.
I'll probably bring him in at some point. I'm not going to be too proud, but he's running really hot. He's overflowing. Watkins the same.
Let's talk about Alvarez a second there. So they've got this great fixture, haven't they, in the Bournemouth game we just saw when we were talking about Haaland captaincy, but then the fixtures do sour, right? And Corey also mentioned, looking a little bit further, they have this blank to think about in game week 18 as well. So you as an FPL elite manager, what are you thinking in terms of people who do own Alvarez? Are you sort of thinking you get through the Bournemouth game and thereafter he's a sell? You think that this?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously the issue about. We're not talking about Haaland, but I've chosen not to sell Haaland. I've got no problem with anybody who does choose. Mm-hmm. I think it's perfectly reasonable logic for selling Haaland. It's not for me. But with Alvarez, he's already running hot. The fixtures get super tight until I think it's 16.
Yeah.
So for me, I'll be bringing him in around 16.
Okay, before the blank. Yeah.
Before the blank. Oh god, yeah, before the blank. Because at the end of the day, I might bring in a defender, but I always get burned by City defenders and goalkeepers. So there is a temptation to bring back a City defender, but I expect to go into their blank with just Alvarez and Haaland as my two City players, and I have no problem benching them.
No.
If it's just two, no problem whatsoever benching them. We still don't know about when the double is going to be. But hopefully it won't be too long till we get some news about whether it's going to be 19 or 20 or whatever it's going to be. But I would have no problem benching Alvarez and Haaland and having them back right away out.
Fair enough, man. Yeah.
I think he's too good value. I mean, leaving aside the fact he's running hot, I think his numbers are still, by running hot, I mean, he's outperforming his expected data. But I still think it's good enough to bring him in. But so Nketiah,
talk to me about him. So he's had this hat trick. What's your read? Lots of minutes played. What's your read on Nketiah?
I think I mean, you wouldn't buy him this week. I wouldn't certainly buy him this week with Arsenal. With Arsenal away to Newcastle. But the weekend after, he's got some super easy game in game week 12. Right?
They do have good fixtures. Arsenal. Bear with me a second. they've got Burnley home and then Brentford away. So they've got a nice little run.
Wolves and Luton, and then so if Jesus is out for
let's assume he is.
12 to,
let's
to 14, 15, then I think Nketiah is really interesting. Really interesting. I mean, he's not going to score 3 goals from 3 shots like he did this weekend, but I still think it makes him sufficiently interesting to bring him in.
Callum
Darwin
Wilson
is the one who scares me.
Yeah, you mentioned him, and they've got the Luton game, haven't they? So I worry that I haven't actually had the full extent of the pain administered just yet from the transferring. What about Callum Wilson here? So they got the Arsenal game, but Fix is really predicting. If you look at the Gameweek 11 through 13 points, there he leads the way with 16. So what's your thoughts on Callum Wilson?
My thoughts on Callum Wilson. One, I've always been ever so reluctant to own him because it always, you shouldn't base your judgments upon this, but I just always feel he's one trip away from a broken leg or a cruciate injury, and he always seems to bite me in the arse when I pick him, which isn't a reason for anybody else not to pick him. The problem for me is I would really want to see how they play against Arsenal in the next game. They looked, as I said, they looked a bit shattered,
exhausted,
in the last
didn't
game.
they? Yeah, man.
They're down to bare bones. Isaac seems to be the one who makes that team tick without really getting the recognition for it. And he's out as well. On the other hand, you would say, he's got a good old-fashioned winger with Gordon who can cut inside and put them on a plate for him. So there's no reason to say he couldn't do it. It's just not for me.
Yeah.
Wilson, I would rather go with somebody safe in midfield. I mean, if it was a choice between restructuring to go with Wilson or going with Mbeumo in midfield, then that would be a no-brainer for me.
I see.
But yeah, Darwin's the one who scares me. Watkins, if you've got him, keep him. But I think the ship has sailed, and he's been running hot for the last few weeks, and then this week he absolutely screwed anybody who just bought him.
Yeah, I mean the underlying numbers were.
Yeah, they were fantastic.
They were fantastic, weren't they? Gosh, very unfortunate.
So I think if you're in a position to go there because of the way your team is structured, I think there's some great options up front. They don't work for me. But apart from Nketiah, I could do if Bowen gets on my nerves this coming weekend, then I think I'm right in saying I could downgrade Bowen to something interesting.
Mitoma, someone like that. Yeah.
Or Mitoma or Mbeumo or the other one. If I don't have enough cash, I've forgotten if I have enough cash or not. But if I didn't, then the other one is Cole Palmer at Chelsea. Who it's on the one hand it's too early. I think it's first 16 when their fixtures start getting really juicy. But he looked really good this weekend.
He was the standout.
His numbers are good. He looks good. I think he had 1 xG. So you would normally expect a really good return off that, and he just looks like a proper player.
Yeah, he does.
And I think Chelsea have been getting. I was discussing this with a friend earlier today. I think they're doing much better than we're giving them credit for, I think. And I think Pochettino this weekend against Brentford didn't maybe actually play so tactically smart. But apart from that one game, I think he's actually been doing really well. And I think it seems to be gelling as a team, which is quite incredible.
Interesting.
When you think where they were at the start of the season. So I, despite the really awful fixtures, I wouldn't be put off by bringing in Palmer early if it was to pave the way for a Nketiah or Wilson or Darwin or somebody up top.
I like it. And I do wonder whether or not Chelsea will click a little bit more now that Reece James looks to be returning to somewhere close to full fitness. He came on as a substitute in that game, Craig, and it immediately looked attacking down the right-hand side. So I do wonder whether or not they will click into gear later down the line. We haven't got Dominic Calvert-Lewin on this screen as well, Craig. I mean, he's just scored a great goal against us. But do you have any thoughts on him or as a kind of really cheap option? And I know they've got a nice fixture in 11 against Brighton. Then they tough couple after that. But what are your thoughts on DCL for Everton as a third option in FPL?
Well, I'll turn it around and let's talk about Everton, because Everton have been. I was just looking at some numbers before we came on. When you're looking at the non-penalty XG, they're mid-table. This is not the crap Everton of days gone by, and it's not the crappy attacking football we've come to perhaps unfairly associate with Sean Dyche. and their numbers for attacking and for defending a really decent mid-table level stuff with bottom end of the table prices.
Yeah, they are.
But we're just back to the old caveat that, I mean, we're absolutely tsunamied with really good value midfielders.
Mm-hmm.
So, and strikers for that matter. I mean, I seem to think Finn only has places for 5 strikers. So I've got no idea where he would fit a 6th in.
No.
But yeah, I mean, if your rank is absolute, I think if your rank is trash, I first think Wilson and Darwin and Nketiah are sufficiently differential enough to choose going for them. But yeah, I have no problem. I think you'd have to be an Everton fan or Calvert-Lewin's mum, but nonetheless, you would have to be really interested in going for him. But I'd have no problem with it because the numbers are there.
The
numbers are there. They're playing well. They're genuinely playing well, but the fixtures aren't great, and that's the thing that kind of would put me off doing it. But I would have no problem if somebody said, "Listen, I'm going for a punt, and DCL is the one I'm going for."
Love it.
No problem.
Love it. Well, that's a nice way to wrap up the forward discussion, Craig. I mean, we talked around 6, I guess, options there and potentially how that would impact upon midfield composition as well. And you were making the point there, it really is quite team-specific, guys. But hopefully some things there for all the viewers to have pondered. Craig, is there anything else you wanted to get off your chest here, or have we covered the main things?
Well, we covered the Everton one. The Everton one, I was just looking through some numbers before we came on. And I had to kind of, rub my eyes a little bit, but it was like, well, that was the surprising team for me, looking at how the teams are playing thus far this season.
Mm-hmm.
That Everton are way, I think we talked about it maybe last time, but it was in that kind of a Saunders team isn't actually playing completely crap football.
Yeah.
But it's just, we're at game week 11 now.
Yeah.
Hats off. He's turned them around. He's doing something half decent.
Definitely.
God knows what it's like off the pitch at that club right now. So it's just hard to fit in. Well, I'm saying it's hard to fit somebody in. The only one I can really think I would fit in if I had to, going back to the Lamptey mistake, I would have gone with, and I forget how to say his name.
Branthwaite.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Another nice option. Branthwaite is the one. If you're looking for a cheap defender, nailed on in a defence which is doing perfectly okay, then I think
he's another great option. You're right. I mean, even if you're a little bit more flush than our old favourite Tarkowski. I mean, he was an absolute shithouse, I have to say, against West Ham on the weekend, and it bored my piss a little bit because, Tom and I were talking as well, and he's another West Ham fan as well, and it was tough to watch as a West Ham fan, but made more so because we could have signed him, and it was like he's a player who you'd love to have in your team and hate to play against. 4.4 million, I believe, at time of recording as well. So they've got some options there, and Brighton at home is not an easy fixture, of course, and they do get tougher after that. But some nice differentials to round off the video. Craig, been an absolute pleasure. I'm so pleased that it's going well for you because you've got one of the best minds of this stuff, and I'm really pleased to see you kicking ass. So we'll get you back on in a few weeks' time and see how the ascent to the top 100k is going before Christmas.
Great.
Cool. All right, buddy. Nice to talk to you again. Guys, do please leave any observations down for Craig in the comments. He's always super active, and we'll get back to any of them. And do please also smash a like on the video on your way out as well. And do please subscribe to fantasyfootballfix.com if you haven't already. And do subscribe to the channel as well as we push forward to 40,000 subscribers as soon as we possibly can. But guys, thanks very much for watching this video. And we will be back with you next week for Game Week 12. Take care. Bye-bye.